I published a video last month about why delivery jobs will all but disappear over the course of the next 10 to 12 years. I was focused primarily on the fact that these Silicon Valley companies are nearing market consolidation and are increasing the efficiency of their dispatch algorithms. But so many of you clung on to the third point about automation and autonomous vehicles. I got backlash from people of all different backgrounds, even those who seem to agree with every other point that I made. In this video, I am doubling down. I'm gonna use my experience in the Silicon Valley culture to break down point by point exactly what these companies are doing to replace not only you, the independent contractor driver, but everyone in the food service and grocery pipeline. A bit later on, I'll discuss what automation looks like inside those industries in 10 to 12 years and why as many as half of all American jobs could be gone in a couple of decades. If you stick around to the very end, I'm gonna let you know how you can prepare for that reality, because it is coming, whether you believe it or not. Hey, my name is Christian, but you can call me Lo. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell button if you like videos about money, entrepreneurship, and lifestyle travel. And also, as a bonus, my wife and I are launching a new channel called Kid a Click. It's all about helping you teach your kids about tech, entrepreneurship, and helping them become familiar with the ever-evolving world that we live in. I've left a link in the description. Please go subscribe. Now, in summer of 2013, Doordash was picked up by Combinator, which is an accelerator program for startups.
With some pretty neat routing and batching algorithms, we're able to send the drivers efficiently to get the orders to the customers at a really fast time.
You'd be forgiven if you've never heard of it, but without Combinator, there's no DoorDash, there's no Instacart, there's no Airbnb, Stripe, Dropbox, or Reddit. It's one of the most influential organizations in the startup space. They've been around since 2005. The combined market value of their companies is over $400 billion. And they're absolutely changing everything about the way we live our everyday lives in ways that you don't even realize. My own startup, Pick Your Photo, was a top contender for their program in early 2019, and I was quite integrated in their startup school, so I'd like to think that I know a couple of things about their culture, their philosophy, but everything that I'm about to tell you is publicly available in their blogs as well. Paul Graham, who's kind of the head honcho of Y Combinator, wrote a letter that sort of outlines their philosophy to founders. In it, he quite famously states the company should focus on problems that don't scale. And I know that kind of runs counter to my point, but what he's trying to say is that startups should stay close to their customers, close to the problems. This is exactly why they have the infamous We Dash program, which is the one where they force all DoorDash employees to take deliveries at least once a month. Our boy and CEO, Tony Zoox, even says that he does customer service every single day. Imagine getting on with support and the other end is Tony Zoox. Tell me in the comments what you would say to Tony if he ended up on the other end of that chat line. So as you've probably guessed by now, Paul Graham doesn't end the letter there. He goes on with all that manual work that you do, all of that keeping up with the problem is specifically so that you can automate as much as possible in the future. That letter is quite long and there's a lot of nuance, but if I could distill it down to a 4-stage process, it would be something like this. First stage, you find a service that people want. Second stage, you identify problems and bottlenecks. Third stage, scale with humans. And this is really important because this is really what we've seen so far is these three stages. All of these apps, Uber Eats, DoorDash, Grubhub, in the UK, Deliveroo and Just Eat, as well as other gig apps like Instacart and Adhere here in Europe. All of these companies are in this stage where they're trying to scale with humans. And the fourth stage, automate everything. The entire point of the first 3 stages is to get to the 4th stage knowing what can be automated. Last month when I published that video, a lot of you guys questioned why we were moving so slowly with autonomous vehicles if, you know, it's theoretically possible that we can move forward with them. In addition to regulatory issues, it's 100% because they know they need to stay in tune with the customer's needs. They know that with automation, with autonomous vehicles, they need to still deliver exactly what the customer expects. Otherwise, it's going to be a huge financial disaster. Take it from me. This is Y Combinator philosophy. This is DoorDash policy. This is Silicon Valley culture. It's just how it works. And you better believe that when they get it right, it will sweep across the country even faster than the delivery apps originally swept across the country in the 2010s. A lot of you guys pointed out that autonomous vehicles aren't already on the road, and they probably should be if my projections are correct, but I don't know who needs to hear this, but they are.
So cool. It doesn't make any sense.
I'm gonna give you just a brief timeline here. There are a lot of vehicles over the last 100 years that have claimed the title of self-driving car. I'm gonna call the birth year of that industry 2014 because that's when Tesla released autopilot. And up until that point, it was by far the most advanced self-driving car to date. It was really the first one that felt like we were actually headed in that direction. Since then, the CEO, Elon Musk, has been promising us that fully self-driving vehicles were just around the corner. And it's been so much time that you'd be forgiven if you stopped taking him seriously. But I want you to forget about Tesla for a moment, because since 2014, a whole bunch of competitors have come up and they're doing things entirely differently.
How LiDAR technology will change the future of autonomous driving.
Just to name a few, we have Google's company Waymo, DoorDash's partner Cruise, we have Uber Eats partner Motional, we have Aurora, we have Zoox, we have Neuro, and we have Baidu. All of Tesla's competitors have added LiDAR onto their vehicles. And if you don't know what that is, you can think of it as radar, but with lasers instead of sound waves. Now, there are pros and cons to each method, but that's not really what this video is about. The point that I'm trying to make here is that Tesla's autopilot is still at level 2 autonomous driving. All of the competitors that I've mentioned here have launched or will have launched by 2023 level 4 autonomous drivers, which are completely humanless. There are no people inside of them. DoorDash's partner Cruise launched an entirely driverless taxi service in San Francisco just at the end of last year. Mind you, they already have permission to do food delivery in San Francisco. Google's company Waymo already runs an entirely driverless taxi company in Phoenix, Arizona. Neuro does entirely driverless food and grocery delivery in Houston. By 2023, you'll be able to catch an entirely driverless Motional taxi in Vegas, or get Uber Eats delivered to you via a Motional completely autonomous vehicle in Santa Monica. And Aurora has already launched their level 4 autonomous semi-trucks that are running routes across Texas. Starship Tech is running deliveries on sidewalks and bike lanes in London, in Hollywood, in San Francisco. This is just a few examples. It is by no means an exhaustive list. And I have to tell you, some of these companies are still testing, but some of them actually already have commercial permission. We're not just at the end of the testing phase. We're actually overlapping with the beginning of the mass production phase. This is already happening. A lot of you guys made the argument, and I understand where you're coming from, that the autonomous vehicles are too expensive and that they will never invest in your market. But I think you're wrong. Say you have a driver who works full-time, you have to imagine that they're making even if you take tips out of the equation and you assume that DoorDash isn't going to up the price to make up for the fact that the customers don't have to tip anymore, DoorDash would still pay a driver something like $25,000 a year for a full-time position. One of these vehicles can take 2 full-time drivers off the road entirely. In a worst case for us scenario, that's worth $50,000 a year. That means that this car can work 16 hours a day, 365 days a year for 13 or 14 years. Even after you factor in the price of the car, the price of maintaining the car, the price of housing the car, the price of fueling the car, you're still saving like $500,000 at least over the lifetime of the vehicle. And I believe that any market that currently has DoorDash right now will eventually be replaced by driverless vehicles. If there's enough money for DoorDash to be there now, there's enough money for them to invest a small fleet of autonomous vehicles. Not to mention that not all autonomous vehicles are the same. I mean, Motional and Zoox have full-sized vehicles. Neuro, Starship Tech, focusing on small, on cheap. Once that price dips below $20,000, a small mom-and-pop pizza parlor might be able to invest in something like a Neuro for their own deliveries to save money on DoorDash fees. And I almost forgot, Cruise, which is DoorDash's partner, actually has their own device that turns any Audi A4 into a driverless car. It just sits on top, it's $10,000, and the CEO said, I'm gonna read his quote, "There's no reason we can't expand to other cars, and we will." The idea of getting like an aftermarket kit that you just hook up to any car to make it autonomous for only $10,000, you can't argue that that's not worth the investment for these companies. Now, I'm not going to go through every single argument that people made in the comments. I do want to introduce something called DoorDash Labs, which launched last year. They're literally called DoorDash's robotics and automation arm. That is literally their entire role. If you want to go onto their blog, they have all sorts of crazy solutions to every single problem you've ever thought of. So I promised you guys that if you made it this far into the video, I would tell you exactly how the delivery app are going about automating the entire food service pipeline. As an American, I'm much more familiar with DoorDash, but this story actually begins with a very ominous BBC documentary about DoorDash's British cousin, Deliveroo. Despite being a British company, Deliveroo is actually started by an American, so you know, go USA.
It could in fact be coming from here. Small containers, a world away from what you think of when you think of a restaurant.
by as early as 2019, Deliveroo was already introducing something called ghost kitchen. And if you don't know what a ghost kitchen is, it's basically a restaurant that exists online only. They've been around for a long time, even since before these apps were around. They aren't really that uncommon. In fact, I've done work for a few of them over the course of my photography career, but there's something particularly dangerous about the apps having their own. The American CEO of Deliveroo has said that they want Deliveroo to be in the household always, even to say it should be most meals. Cooking at home should be a hobby, not a necessity. Now, for some of you that might sound exciting, and for others of you that might sound apocalyptic, but whatever your feelings of it, what they want is total market domination. In 2021, DoorDash announced that they were following Deliveroo's lead and they opened up their own ghost kitchens, but they're taking it a few steps further. For starters, this kind of opens up the door to sort of monopolistic tendencies where they own an entire industry. Now, the reasons that this would be bad for restaurants are obvious. These apps have all the data that they need to know exactly what the customers want. They'll probably never put big brands like McDonald's and Starbucks out of business, but if there's one thing that I know about delivering during the pandemic, it's that these small mom and pop shops were already struggling. So what these apps are going to do is it's definitely going to put them on their heels. Large swaths of them are probably going to go out of business. It's not a true monopoly, but it sort of gives them monopolistic-like power where they control an entire industry. That's not just bad for the restaurants, that's also bad for the consumer. A company that with that kind of power dictates everything. If you're familiar with Little Caesars, when Little Caesars came to town, all of the local pizzerias went out of business because they had their $5 hot and readies. As soon as all those companies went out of business, guess what Little Caesars did? They raised their price. It's like $8 now. You give a company sort of monopolistic power, as in they're the only alternative. What they can do is they can put the competition out of business and then they dictate the terms. That was just a little tangent. This video is not about monopolies. Now, currently in these ghost kitchens that DoorDash has, they create jobs. That sounds like a good thing. But the reason that this makes it into this video in particular is because these ghost kitchens are following the exact same formula that all Y Combinator companies tend to follow. 1, find a service that people want. 2, identify problems and bottlenecks. 3, scale with humans. And 4, automate everything. DoorDash as a company is probably already somewhere in stage 4, and their ghost kitchens are probably only in around stage 2. But let me give you a glimpse into what stage 4 looks like. DoorDash somewhat recently bought a company called Chowbotic. Just like it sounds, Chow and Botics, they do robots that make food. This is what their machine looks like, and no, this machine by itself probably isn't going to replace restaurant workers or food prep. In the last few years, I mean, dozens of companies have come out that are coming and robotizing food preparation. They're always going to use people to solve problems at first, but then what they do is they get it down to a science. They get their process down to perfection, and then they automate everything. This DoorDash acquisition of Chowbotic is only the beginning. It's just a sign that we're headed in that direction. Let me show you a couple other companies that are on the forefront of this automated food prep industry. I'm not going to go into as much detail about this as I did about the autonomous vehicles, but I just want to give you a little insight into what the future actually looks like. I know how Uber Eats works. I know how DoorDash thinks. I know what Instacart's goals are. Because I'm intimately familiar with this Y Combinator philosophy that is shaping the world as we know it, I am making an educated speculation that these ghost kitchens are stage 2 of the 4-step process toward fully automated kitchens that deliver their food via fully autonomous vehicles. I'm not going to put a number of years that it's going to take for DoorDash, Deliveroo, Uber Eats, Just Eat, and Grubhub to fully automate their ghost kitchens. I think it's probably going to happen after the rush of fully autonomous vehicles. But I do believe it's coming. It's just part of the natural evolution of how these businesses work, of how they think. You can argue with me all you want about what you think is going to happen, but perhaps the most respected study on how automation is going to affect the workplace is a 2013 Oxford study titled The Future of Employment. The scientists assign numerical values to calculate the approximate probability that a given job will be automated in some unspecified number of years, though they know that this graph that they have probably acts more like a rough timeline, as in all jobs, given enough time, will probably be automated. They don't really like to give very specific answers to the how long question, but they do put in their notes that everything in the high risk category has a high likelihood of being fully automated in the next couple of decades. That puts us to about 2033. The high likely category is 47% of all jobs. Among them, there's an 89% chance that a taxi driver will be fully autonomous, and there's a 97% chance that store clerk or cashier, which brings me to my next point because I kind of went on a tangent there. DoorDash Labs has launched something that they're calling DashMart. However, DoorDash itself is calling it a new type of convenience store. If you read all their articles about it, you could probably guess that internally they're really calling it something else, their replacement for convenience stores. 7-Eleven should be shaking in their boots because DashMart is immediately going to take a huge chunk of their business. But other stores should be worried too because DashMart could easily turn into something like an Amazon warehouse where you can have anything and everything within like an hour. As it stands, DashMart has employees that go stock the shelves and bag your groceries. You can't set foot in a DashMart. And just like their ghost kitchens, DoorDash is in stage 2 of that 4-stage process with DashMart. They're essentially identifying problems and bottlenecks, and soon they'll be scaling with people. Let me give you just a taste of what stage 4 probably looks like. This is an Ocado warehouse in Andover, United Kingdom, right now. This is what they look like now. Be honest and tell me in the comments, how many of you guys knew that there were fully automated grocery warehouses in the UK? Because I didn't before I started this video. I'm not going to try to put a number of years on how long we have before everything is fully automated like I did with the autonomous vehicles. I do think that Deliveroo, Ocado, DoorDash, Uber Eats, they're all closer than people give them credit for. But what I do want to do is tell you what you can do about it. It actually is super important how we as people react to these companies essentially taking half our jobs. And other studies have come out and said, there's one that came out and said 30% of 60% of jobs will be automated, meaning we require fewer people. It's altogether possible that we will live in a world in a couple of decades where either we have half the workforce or we're just producing at massive quantities. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like, and I will always argue for a UBI in that sort of scenario, but I'm not holding my breath for it. These are questions that we as a society are going to have to answer, but in the meantime, here's what you can do about it. In my last video, I left you guys a very impassioned and heartfelt message about entrepreneurship and taking ownership of your own future. What are you really passionate about? What gets you up in the morning? And with every fiber of my being, I believe every word that I said, but I'm not a huge fan of broken records, and I'm probably not gonna top that speech anyway. Rather than remaking it, I will go ahead and leave a timestamped link in the description below. I'm gonna take a different approach with the end of this video. That same Oxford study that described the jobs that are most at risk of being automated also put jobs at the other end of the spectrum and let us know which jobs are at the lowest risk of automation. And among them were things like deacon or pastor, therapist, mental health and social workers. And I'm not suggesting that you go out and get one of those jobs, but what I am saying, it is all about human connection. I don't think this is going to happen in 2 decades, but we're eventually going to become redundant. So over time, we're going to be faced with the question of like, what does it actually mean to be human? If a robot can do just about anything that a human can do, but can a robot really experience with you? Can they really feel emotions? Can they really love? I mean, there's an argument to be made, but for the purpose of this thought exercise, I'm just going to say the answer is no. We need to take what it means to be human and really identify ourselves by those values. We have to celebrate culture. We have to celebrate emotion. We have to celebrate experience. This is going to sound so stupid, and maybe it's a false equivalency, but that's exactly why I published that emotional video that so many of you guys saw and so many of you guys criticized, if I'm honest. A lot of people said, bro, I just want the information. I don't need you crying all over me. But the truth is, that's what makes us human. There's already AI that can write probably better tutorials than you can. And there are already deepfakes that can turn those into video tutorials that probably do a better job of explaining a concept than you ever could. Just imagine the possibilities in 10 to 20 years. Is it even going to be me speaking into this camera? And what separates those trillions of data points from what I have to say is emotion, is experience, is that human connection that I hope you feel with me just as I feel with you. That's what the future looks like. That's what the future of humanity looks like. Now, I'm gonna be honest, I can't tell you exactly how to get there. Path to human connection is different for everybody. For me personally, I feel like I gained most of my experience through travel. I traveled as cheaply as I could to go to as many places as I could to meet as many people as I could. That gives me the uncanny ability to meet somebody, anybody on the street, and connect with them over something. Just the other day I met somebody from Cuenca, just this little town in the middle of Ecuador. I'm here in London. We're like 10,000 miles away or more. Just the fact that I was able to have a conversation with him about his favorite coffee shop right in the historic center of the town is just like, I mean, it's like amazing. I'm just here trying to talk about the human connection, about what the future of humanity actually looks like. It's all about finding those people that you can vibe with, creating happiness, creating connection. Please, if you've made it this far, leave it in the comments below. What do you think makes you human? What makes you unique? What allows you to create connection with other people? I wonder if a robot can enjoy a sunset. Oh, it's a beautiful one. Thank you guys so much for making it all the way to the end. I love you. Good night.